enter into the picture here now the most important human being in the story of Calvin's life. Wow. And that is this man named William Farel, or Guillaume Farel. That green is not any better. So Farel is in Geneva trying to do the work there. He is a generation older than Calvin, and he sees great promise in Calvin's future. He hears that the man who wrote the Institutes is there. So this is around 1536, so Calvin's still not 30 years old. They hear the man who wrote the Institutes, this bestseller, this great work, is in town, and Farel detains him and says, you need to stay in Geneva. I know you want to go to Strasbourg. And so Calvin writes about this in his preface to the Psalms. Calvin admitted he was by nature unpolished and bashful. Calvin was probably someone in person you walk away and you think, smart guy, little awkward. He said he preferred, quote, shade and retirement. Many of us do. Strasbourg is where, we'll come back to him. Wow, this is bad too. Martin Butzer is. He wants to go to Strasbourg. I'm going to write. I'm going to do French things. I'm going to have this impact through my scholarship, shade and retirement. And Farel says no. Here's how Calvin writes about it. Famous paragraph. I had resolved to continue in the same privacy and obscurity until at length William Farel detained me at Geneva, not so much by counsel and exhortation as by dreadful imprecation, which I felt to be as if God had from heaven laid his mighty hand upon me to arrest me. After learning that my heart was set upon devoting myself to private studies, for which I wish to keep myself free from other pursuits. He wants to be a research professor. He wants to be a private scholar. Finding that he gained nothing by his entreaties, Farel proceeded to utter a curse, that God would curse my retirement and the tranquilities of my studies if I should withdraw and refuse to give assistance when the necessity was so urgent. This is Farel. He's a fiery guy. He says, don't mean this in a funny way, he says, may God damn your studies and your retirement and your tranquility while you head off to Strasbourg and read your books. We need you here in Geneva, right in the lion's den. And so Calvin, as he would again and again, he submits himself to Farel, and he takes up the work in Geneva from 15. These markers last one word. You know, people, R.C. Sproul had a chalkboard, and the technology has not improved. From 1536 to 1538, he throws himself into the work, and his work was not appreciated. He was French, and to oppose him became an act of patriotism. They spoke French. They didn't like the French. He had no official political power. In fact, there's a debate on, was Calvin ever ordained? I haven't had to look it up because with all these other people, you have a date when they were ordained. There's no known date when Calvin was ordained. Some people say he never was. Others say he was ordained by the Catholic Church, but not the Protestant, or vice versa. For my part, I find it hard to believe that when he came into Geneva to preach and to pastor, that the council there wouldn't have ordained him if he hadn't been already. And the Catholics, with all sorts, they throw everything at Calvin against him. And this doesn't come out that he hadn't been duly ordained. So though we don't have record, I assume that he was. They do not like the changes. It is a rocky 2 years. The people disliked him intensely. Mobs rioted outside his house. They threatened to throw him into the river. They named their dogs Calvin, not in a cute way. Looking back on those 2 years, Calvin said this, I can truly testify that not a day passed in which I did not long for death 10 times over. Not what you put on your CV. He says about Geneva, quote, there is no place, this is later, there is no place under heaven that I am more afraid of. I would submit to death 100 times rather than to that cross which I had to die daily 1,000 deaths. They don't like him, and he is not happy. In 1538, he gets kicked out of Geneva. It's the happiest any man has ever been to be fired from his job. And you know where he goes? Strasbourg. That's where he wanted to go all along.